So welcome everyone to Psalms for Life, in which we explore a different chapter of Psalms each week. This week we will be taking a look at the chapter 60, and I reading it and learning it and preparing for this class was one thing. Then seeing the fires that started in the north of Israel was quite another, because this psalm is once again by Hashgacha Pratis, by divine providence, very much connected to what is going on currently. We'd like to thank Esther Elagorovich for sponsoring this class. It should be a merit and a source of bracha for her and her family. And this class is dedicated to our sponsors' parents, Chaim ben Nechama and Batya bat Manya. May they have long and healthy lives. It's dedicated to the brave soldiers of the IDF and those who have lost their lives al Kiddush Hashem, and specifically dedicated as a protection for Nir ben Nurit and Yehuda ben Livnat. At the end of class, we will be saying Tehillim all together. And at that time, you'll also be able to open your chat. You can open it now if you like, and we'll take questions at the end as well. The segula for Psalm 60 is a psalm to say before going to war. Okay. I think even in a war, it's a good idea to say Psalm 60 and to understand that we are talking about an external war with our enemies, but at the same time, we are also genuinely talking about our inner battles as well. Well, we have to understand something about what our tzaddikim teach us, and that is that our spiritual, inner psycho-spiritual development and experience is at all times and in all ways, although in ways we don't always have consciousness of, is connected to what's going on externally in this world, especially with the Jewish people and Klal Yisrael, the nation, the people of Israel, and the nation of Israel, the land of Israel, I should say. And it's also connected with what's going on in the higher levels, okay, in the spiritual realms. So when we see all the chaos and war and destruction, we have to understand that it's not only a message to us, this we're aware of, but that it's also a reflection of something that we need to ride out and work on internally, each of us. Okay. I am going to begin this psalm. Okay. So this chapter is written as David is preparing for war with the north. As King David is preparing for war with the north. And today we would call this area Syria. It's also called Syria. And at the time, there were two separate kingdoms in this area, both called Aram, or both falling under the designation of the name Aram. And at that time, Israel was facing constant attacks, a relentless bombardment from Aram Naharaim in Damascus and Aram Sova in Aleppo, both main centers of Syria, even to this day. And we know in Jewish history, the Jewish people who lived in Syria for many, many, many centuries, they only fled in the last century, lived in Aleppo and Damascus. Now, as I mentioned, this is both a contemporaneous psalm about what's going on today, and it's also a psalm of prophecy about the era of Mashiach, which is also today. We are the generation of Mashiach, our sages say. And initially, what happened is that this General Yoav, who has a brother Avishai, who we'll talk about briefly, this General Yoav came to King David and told him that Aram was a huge problem and something needed to be done, okay? Because like the past decades, they were attacking from the north again and again and again. And it's something Israel bore with because it wasn't necessarily or didn't seem like an existential threat. Nonetheless, there was loss of life and damage to property and so on. So King David went to the Sanhedrin for advice and for permission to attack. And he went and he removed his crown and his royal robes and went there in great humility. Okay. And the Sanhedrin granted him permission to wage this war, not just to stop the destruction from the north, but trigger warning, okay, not politically correct, to establish Israel's dominance over the 70 nations. Why? To usher in an era of universal peace. Okay. And we are told, of course, that David wanted to build the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And he knew that this would be a house for all nations and would bring about peace, which it did for a very long time. Now, David dedicates this psalm to the Sanhedrin because they granted him permission. Now, what we have to remember was that although this was considered to be an offensive war, it wasn't really was a war of defense because they were attacking. But because he decided to rout out years and years of these attacks and to get rid of these people, it's kind of, some generals would consider it a offensive war, which to me doesn't make sense, but that's the way they think. Okay. To me, it's obviously defensive. Now, David waged this war, and like his other wars with the Philistines, the Moab, and so on, eventually he was able to declare victory. And his general Yoav, who I want to come back to, here's how the war started to play out. He was attacking Edom in the southeast. Currently today, that's Transjordan. He was fighting a war there. Again, he had no choice because Transjordan, that area called Edom, okay, which comes from Esav, okay, or Esau in the Torah, that's the nation that comes from him. He was attacking, they were attacking Israel also. And this was a war of defense. But he came to David and told him this is a problem. Now, the Sanhedrin, when they gave permission to David and to Yoav to go out and organize the war, what generals do, they develop the tactics and what they're going to use and so on and so forth, the battle plan. There's a note that the Sanhedrin didn't grant permission for that land to become part of Israel officially, halachically, by Jewish law. So the Sanhedrin itself also ruled this as an offensive war, a war of offense, that where Israel went on the attack, granted with very good motives. It wasn't to loot or to pillage or, God forbid, anything like that, just to stop the attacks and stop the threat. But because it was considered an offensive war, Israel could not expand its boundaries and make Syria part of Israel. Now, we know that part of Lebanon was part of Israel, but this part of Syria was not. Now, this also is a prophetic psalm where King David is actually begging Hashem to have mercy and compassion on us because of all the enemies that surround us. So that's a constant theme throughout the psalm. Another good reason to say this psalm today. Okay. And I have been trying to say it every day since I learned this. I only learned this recently in my preparations for this psalm. And suddenly, people who never noticed how much a lot of the world hates us are noticing, and they're seeing that we have enemies. So can encourage people. People do not have to even believe so much. They can be wherever they're at. We can encourage them to say this song. It's part of what the Jewish people do. And I would say that it's one of the most Jewish things you could do is to say Tehillim. And I'd like to ask you to not only say it yourself, but to encourage your friends and family to say it if possible. And I was just really awed by the prophecy of the psalm, the timeliness of the psalm. You know, I was supposed to give this lesson last week, and I had an unavoidable appointment, which turned out to be canceled the day of, or the day of, I think. It is quite an amazing thing because this psalm had to be for today. It just had to be for today. And you will see the connection even more as we continue. Okay. Lamanatseach al Shushan Edus, Michtam LeDavid LeLamed. For the conductor on the Shushan Edus, a Michtam of David to teach. So many commentators say that the Shushan, which obviously sounds like Shoshana, it sounds like rose, is an instrument shaped like a rose, and it's one that produces very beautiful music. It produces music that's as beautiful as a rose. Shushan also refers to the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is called a rose. Why? Because the Sanhedrin makes the halachic rulings, the legal rulings of the times. It tells people what they could and couldn't do. And this protected the beauty of Israel like a thorny hedge, okay, would protect a rose. I just thought that was very beautiful. The Midrash says, in this instance, Mechtam is a contraction of makos tamos, total beatings. Why? Because the Sanhedrin told David to go beat Aram totally and completely. And of course, we've discussed Mechtam before. It means a crown, and it's a type of a song, and the crown might refer to what I mentioned in the beginning about King David going in front of the Sanhedrin and removing his crown and removing his royal robes to demonstrate that he was coming to them as a human being, a humble person, just a humble soldier. He was coming to them as, and for them to be able to make that ruling, and he would abide by it. And he did. Okay. All right, let's continue. Bahatsoso es Aram Naharayim, ve'es Aram Tsova, vayashav Yoav, vayach es Edom, bigay melach, shenem asar aleph. When he made war against Aram Naharayim and Aram Sova, and Yoav returned and destroyed Edom, okay, 12,000 in the Valley of Salt. Now, the Midrash changes this hey in Behatsoso to Bechatsoso, okay, which means to split in half. And this is what David did after the victory. He split Aram, he split Syria, And he took the people of Aram Naharaim and moved them to the territory of Aram Sova and vice versa. This is a very common military tactic. It's a cruel one in the United States. This is what they did with the Native American Indians. They would take people from a desert and move them to the plains, take people from the plains and move them to a forest. And that's how they took the power away from these people. And this is what David did. Necessarily, he had to do it. And I will tell you that many years ago, I worked a long time ago. I worked with do some writing for a classicist and a war historian. He's rather well known, and I learned a lot about this stuff. And I can say that at the time it was interesting, but it didn't grab me. But learning about David's battles and seeing that the ancient Greeks and the ancient Jews had very many overlapping battle tactics. Who got from whom, I don't know. We know that the Torah informed the decisions about whether or not to use a tactic, but what the tactic was, or whether this tactic existed or not, I don't know that it's necessarily coming from Israel. I thought this was very interesting. There's also a debate whether these 12,000 that were killed or slain in the Valley of Salt, whether this was Jews killed, Israelites killed, or Edomites killed. And why would they mention it here? We know that Yoav definitely killed all these Edomites. He had to. But it says here he returned and killed Edom, 12,000 in the Valley of Salt. So what does this mean? He returned. So it says very possibly that Edom joined forces with Aram. And we see today, most of them are united against us. Qatar is providing cover for Hamas and funds to Hamas. And essentially, there's no difference between Qatar and Hamas. And Iran and Syria are joined against us. And they're all joined. Politically, Jordan navigates quite an interesting, treacherous political war against us, and so on. Egypt, they're all working in one way or another against us. Okay. And I won't go into there's a lot of interesting details about the battles and the numbers slain, but that's maybe not so interesting to you, so I'll continue. It was kind of interesting to read. So if you're interested, you can read Shmuel 2 with a commentary, or the Art Scroll has great information in it. The Art Scroll commentary at Tehillim, because they take from so many sources. Rav Hirsch has information. There's just a lot out there. Okay, I'm going to continue. I don't even know where I am. I'm on Gimel. Elohim zanach tanu firatz tanu anafta tishovev lanu. Elohim, you've forsaken us. You've breached us. You were angry with us. Restore us. So David said this in panic, we are told, at the start of the war. This is when Hadadezer, the great general of Aram, crossed the Euphrates River and tried to annex part of Israel. Rashi, however, sees this as a prophecy for today, for our times. He says that this will be referring to the war against us right now. And he also sees it as a shorter prophecy, a shorter duration prophecy of the time when Edom would occupy Israel with brutality during the Roman occupation, which, of course, I guess that wasn't a prophecy. It was a prophecy of David's, but Rashi wasn't a prophecy for him. This is what he's telling us here. Okay, let's continue. Hirashta eretz pitsamta rifa shivareha ki or chi mata. You caused the land to quake. You split it, heal its breaches, because it totters, it shakes. So Midrash Tanhuma says this is evidence of miracles, that Hashem caused an earthquake to shatter the earth and make two pieces of land, okay, that were far apart, joined together, shortening the distance from the army's staging point, so the army didn't have to expend so much energy and resources on traveling to battle the enemies. This is called Kefitzas Haaretz, and we could also say that even without the earthquake, we hear of, with the Baal Shem Tov and the other Hasidim, something called Kefitzas Haderech, a shortening of the path or shortening of the way. And this miracle before David was only granted to Abraham, Eliezer, and Yaakov. Excuse me. I won't go into it. You can look it up because I want to get through the psalm today, but you can look up the instances of that. Now, Rashi also sees this as referring to the time when Rome would build settlements in Israel, dividing, breaking the Jews in two, and he describes it as Caesarea. It was like a peg, okay, or Caesarea, I think in English, is a peg driven into the land of Israel to divide it in two. And if you've ever been there, you can see all the Roman ruins there. Okay, the word repha, it means to heal it, but it means to heal it softly and gently. And totters, it's very interesting. The Talmud says that the Roman exile, and this is referring to Edom here, that we are in now, okay, the exile of Edom in the time, the era of Mashiach, won't come until we totter. What does that mean? Till we totter, we shake, we tremble, we fall. Tottering is like a falling. So this means that we totter in degradation. We have to, unfortunately, become so low spiritually that Mashiach has no choice to come. That is one opinion, Sanhedrin 97a. Another opinion, you can read about it in my book, which is Mashiach, Hope for Turbulent Times. You can read about it in my book, that also there's an opinion where we will all be at a high level. We'll all have already done tshuva. So a couple of opinions. Okay, let's go to verse 5. Hirisa amacha kasha, hishkisanu yayin tar ela. So you have given those who fear you you have shown your you have shown your people harshness, and you made us drink the wine of bewilderment. Excuse me, I skipped to the next verse. So wine shuts down the heart. People drink wine, it helps them forget the exile and the difficulties we're going through, but also this refers to confusion. We're confused, okay? David's people were confused. The war was confusing. This is speaking to Hashem, telling him that your people, Hashem, are confused. Sometimes we can't see our way out of this darkness, and we're bewildered, and we're suffering, and we're struggling. So David's saying, please, Hashem, help us. Okay. Nesata lireacha nes lehisno nes mipnei koshet salah. You have given those who fear you a nes. Okay. Here we'll do the simple meaning, a banner, to raise themselves up for the sake of truth. So nes, or nes in modern Hebrew, means a banner or flag. It also means and refers to a nisayon, a test or a trial. And it also means a miracle. It means all three things. Okay, so you gave to those who fear you a banner to be raised high. So the Sfas Emes says that Hashem serves us, so to speak, and performs miracles for our sake, and they act on the outside the boundaries of nature, and therefore we too are obligated to act outside the boundaries of our own inner natures and personalities in order to come close to Hashem. And this is what he says this is referring to. Okay, it's referring to these miracles. And when we do this, then we ourselves are raised high like a banner. And this describes the battle with the Yetzer Hara. So again, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a war on many levels. Okay, an inner war, an inner battle each of us has. Every time we want to do something that we know is going to take us away from Hashem, are we going to give into that impulse? Are we going to pull ourselves back from that impulse? Okay, sometimes it's not an issue. Sometimes it is an issue. We need help. We need to talk to Hashem and ask for his help in this all the time. We need to talk to Hashem and ask for his help in this. And at the same time, David's speaking about a battle standard, a flag, and also he's speaking about a nisayon, a test. And I would say in shorthand, nisim, miracles, come from the nisayon, come from the test. Okay, so when we're tested and we push ourselves outside what we think is possible for ourselves, go that measure, that extra measure, we experience miracles. I can tell you, I'm sure each of you has an example of this in your life. I think of so many examples in my life of miracles. You know, we could call them hashgacha pratis, divine providence, but more than that, things that seem to be happening outside the bounds of nature. Okay, let's continue. There's more on this. One more thing about Rashi says, there's so many commentaries here. He says that Hashem puts the Jewish people through so many trials, and in the final judgment, we will be rewarded. And Hashem wants the world to admit this koshet, which is an Aramean word for truth. Okay, somehow it's connected to emet, to truth, and that we survived so many trials. And he wants the world to see this, and then we'll be able to raise our banner high. Okay, let's continue. Lema'an yechalatsun yididecha, hoshia yimincha va'aneni. So in order that your beloved ones should be released, save your right hand and answer me. And of course, I can say how important it is that we say this line, because we are all davening for the release of the hostages. Okay, that they should be alive and they should come home to their families. They should be released from that nightmare. I don't want to imagine what I do imagine. And so this particular verse, if you can't say, you don't have time to say a whole psalm, each verse constitutes its own complete tefillah. So with women, especially those with young children at home who are unable to daven the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei prayer, because you can't be interrupted. Okay, it might be impossible for them with, if you have toddlers. So they can say Tehillim, because with Tehillim, the gift of Tehillim is you can stop at any line. You do not have to complete the entire parak, the entire chapter that you're saying. You can say one verse. Choose your verses if you're in a rush. Memorize a verse or two. Not hard, just one. Something you can say when you're walking to an appointment. And this is also very helpful for what I would call thought replacement. Rebbe Nachman teaches we can only have one thought in our mind at a time. Try it, okay? Think about an elephant, and now think about what you're going to make for dinner. You can ping pong back and forth between those thoughts, but unless you're visualizing the elephant in your kitchen, you can't actually think about these things at the same time, okay? And the Rebbe says that we just need to replace our negative thoughts, the thoughts that drag us down, when we're beating ourselves up, when we're saying, how will I ever do this? I'm not good enough. When we're thinking about, oh, this person frustrates me. When we're thinking about, where's Hashem? I see war, I see bloodshed. Where's Hashem? When we have these thoughts, the best thing to do is to replace them with a positive thought. My suggestion, I've been suggesting this for a decade, is to have some of those positive thoughts already memorized, written down in your mind, in your purse, on your wall, so you can just go right away to that verse. It could be your own words, doesn't have to be a verse from Tehillim. Say it, get it into your mind, and replace the negative thought, and you will see a shift in a positive direction, God willing. Now, the beloved ones here, the Yedidecha, your beloved ones, refers to all the righteous people. That is who is beloved by Hashem. We think of tzaddikim, but we also have to remember that Hashem says all his people are righteous. So that includes each of us. The Midrash Sachar Tov says, very interesting, that the Yedidecha, the beloved ones, refers to the Beis HaMikdash, because from Psalm 84, it says, Ma Yedidos Mishkanosecha, how beloved are your tabernacles, Hashem. And that's built in the territory of Binyamin, whom Moshe called Yedid. Okay, so Hashem this is a hint, says this Midrash, to the idea that David fought these wars to prepare for the construction of the Beis HaMikdash. We don't need a hint, we know he did it, but this is embedded in this line. And what does this save with your right hand, or save? What does this mean? So this is interesting. There's so many things I'm going to leave out because we have limited time, but Radak says he reads it as save your right hand. That is when Hashem ignores the atrocities against us and doesn't seem to protect us. It seems like he's unable to protect us and his hands are tied. We're only human. And when we see the horror, don't beat yourself up if you have a moment of doubt. People have doubts. Instead, pull yourself back, okay? And remind yourself that David plead for Hashem to release his hands and respond. Why? Because it's a shame for the enemies to think that Hashem can't do everything. And so this verse is very powerful. Now, the kasiv, the written spelling of this verse is here is let me find it. Va'anenu, okay, answer us. But it's pronounced va'aneni, answer me. King David and Israel are indivisible. His personal rescue is the rescue of all of us. And of course, I see this clearly as a hint to Mashiach, Mashiach ben David, okay? The Mashiach of the son of David. That's coming. And he also is part of this. Answer us, save with your right hand and answer us. Okay, next verse. Elohim, sorry, I'm going to read I forgot I used to read Elohim, but I'm going to read it now. Elohim diber b'kadosho eloza achalka shechem ve'emek sukos amaded. So Hashem Hashem spoke in his sanctuary. I will exult. I will divide portions, Shechem, and I will measure out the valley of Sukkot, the valley of Sukkos. When the Jews return from exile, this is saying very simply, enemy territory will be apportioned out to us by Hashem. Very simple reading. Rashi says that Shechem refers to Shechem, which of course today they're called Nablus, which was the first place Yaakov camped when he returned to Israel from Aram, and the first place he purchased land there. And this is a prophecy that all the land will return to us completely when the Geula occurs. Let's continue. Li Gilad, Vili Menashe, Ephraim Ma'oz Roshi, Yehuda Mechokeki, Moab Sears Rachzi. Gilad, or Gilead in English, is mine. Menashe is mine. And Ephraim is the stronghold of my head. Yehuda is my lawgiver. Okay, this is referring to the various tribal territories, inscribing the laws in the Jewish nation's law books is the special right of Yehuda, the tribe of royalty, David's own tribe. Now, I do want to say a lot of Kabbalah embedded in these names. This I learned from the Ben Ish Chai. Whenever you see names, like especially one after the other, you can look for deeper meanings. We don't have time to explore that today, but just those two verses would be fascinating. Maybe you can explore on your own. Okay. Did I say Moab yet? I think I did. Sorry, that's the next verse. Moab Sirach Tzi Al Edom Ashlich Naali Alai Peleshes Hisrael. So Moab is my wash basin. On Edom, I will cast my lot. Philistia or Peleshet joined together with me. So Moab is lowly, like a chamber pot, says Rashi. I'm assuming everybody knows that a chamber pot is like a potty, okay, before there was indoor plumbing or even outdoor plumbing. So according to Radak, not Rashi, excuse me. So why mention Moab at all? So Al-Shich explains something very powerful. And I'm going to probably refer to this again this Sunday in our discussion on Ruth. You're welcome to join me. That David spent his life washing his soul, so to speak, because of his Moabite ancestry. Okay, so we have to understand that this was something that David was very ashamed of, and it was a healthy shame. Why was it a healthy shame? So Talmud teaches us that no one should be a ruler or a leader unless they have unless they have on their back a basket of creepy crawlies, reptiles. What does this mean? So a leader's family tree, what's behind him, should have some lowly ancestry. So if they get too full of themselves, people can tell them, look behind you, look what's on your back. Okay, your bloodline is not so great. So this attests to an accounting one point of view for David's extreme humility, which I mentioned, and described his actions of humility in the beginning. And there are many instances, by the way, in his story. And he was very humble because it caused him great shame. Now, in Judaism, we have unhealthy shame like everyone else, but we also have healthy shame. So we have a toxic shame and we have a holy shame. This is a holy shame because it motivated David from becoming too arrogant. While Shaul, King Saul, who had only aristocratic upper class bloodlines, he wouldn't listen to any criticism. He wouldn't take advice. This was his downfall. Okay. And, it's quite amazing what we can learn from this. We've been, if you grew up in secular culture or secular Western culture, you've been taught that shame is a terrible thing. It's toxic. It's no good. But again, there's a kind of shame that's healthy. It leads to great humility. And Rebbe Nachman says something amazing. He says, this is the quote I have: Mashiach's parents won't be so ay. Okay, they won't be so great. His family won't be so great. Okay, and we know from a more mystical perspective that the reason for all the negative intricacies of David's bloodline, okay, and I'm going to post a video that I did. It's for Breslov Research Institute, but I'm going to post a video where you can hear a little bit about Ruth and her bloodline, which of course she's David's great grandmother or great great grandmother. You will see that the reasons for it is that Mashiach has to be hidden on the other side. There's an energetic law of spiritual physics in Judaism that we shouldn't have something good so out in the open. Now, are there ostentatious people? Sure. But we are cautioned, we are warned severely against being ostentatious. We're told to be modest and humble, to live as humbly as possible, and to not flaunt or flash, because it causes ayin hara. It causes people to be jealous and give the ayin hara, the evil eye, so-called evil eye. And it causes that negative spiritual energy to go outwards onto others. And Mashiach has to remain hidden on a kind of not so special negative side, okay, until the time is right for him to come, in order to avoid attacks of negative spiritual energies. Now, we know there will be battles ahead, but until that point, he needs to gather his strength. Now, what that means, does that mean his soul? Does it mean him as a man? I don't know. Nobody knows. I'm assuming nobody knows except maybe the 36 hidden Sadiq, and maybe one of them knows. But the idea for us, and what the takeaway for us is that, look, oh, my spider friend is back. All right, hi, spider. I thought he had gone away. So the idea is that we have to really be cautious with ourselves, our families, and so on. We have a culture in America specifically, and other places too. It's not just America, but I'm only going to speak for Americans, of bragging and showing off and social media and look what I've got. I got my own private jet and whatever it is. And this is considered very negative. And again, in Judaism, the king is humble. Okay, we are entering tonight the sphere of Malchus, the sphere of kingship, sovereignty. And that sphere is related to so many things, but one of the things it's related to specifically is humility. Okay, this idea that the king only rules with the with the assent of his subjects. Okay, king shouldn't be a dictator. Okay, a Jewish king certainly not. And we know Hashem himself, we crown him. He gives us the power to crown him on Rosh Hashanah. So he rules with our agreement. We make Hashem king. Yes, he's king of the universe anyway, but when we do that, we are making him king over ourselves. Okay, I know I'm digressing, but I could go on for hours because it's a very important topic and it's a very personal topic as well. Okay, so this also means that this verse refers to keeping Moab under surveillance, but not Edom. Edom is the lock, casts his lock. He throws his lock on him. Edom is farther away in the southeast, we mentioned at the beginning, in Transjordan. So I have to lock it up. Okay, Moab I can watch. Edom, I have to put a lock on it. Radak translates Naali as shoe, not lock, and says this refers to David trampling Edom and Aram underfoot. And another Midrash says that at the time of Mashiach, Hashem is going to shmush Edom underfoot and stamp them out. And that's what this verse is. It's a prophecy that Hashem, upon Edom, he's going to cast his shoe, whatever that means. Okay. But he's going to, when we say he shmushes or steps on or stamps out, I don't think we have to visualize, a death per se. I think, we can visualize people being under Hashem's foot, meaning that they have a turnaround and they recognize Hashem and they come to Hashem. Because that's really what we want. We want the whole world to come to Hashem. We don't want to see death. No Jew wants to see a death. Okay. All right. Let's continue. Excuse me. What time is it? Okay. Let's get going. I'm late. Okay. Mi yovileni ir matzor, mi nachani ad Edom. So who will bring me to the fortified city? Who has led me onto Edom? Okay. So Matsur can be a fortified city, but Targum says it's Rome. So it means who will bring me to Rome? So David is asking Hashem, and only you can conquer Rome. Only Hashem can conquer Rome. And he's equating it with Edom because we know Edom is Rome. And today that's the West. Some people say it's the Catholic Church, but I think it's much, much broader than that. And we mentioned before that Edom also was in Transjordan at the time, and there was Roman occupation. Okay, so let's continue. Halo ata Elohim zanach tanu, velo seitze Elohim bitzivo seini. O Elohim, who has until now, do not forsake us. Do not forsake us, and not go forth Hashem. Do not go forth Hashem with our troops, with our legions. Okay, so this is a question. Hashem, you're forsaking us, and you do not go forth with our legions. So it says, you will lead me to victory. That's the first verse. It's saying, the previous verse, who's going to lead me to Edom? And then it's saying, don't forsake us. Or it's also saying, did you not forsake us? So what's going on here? So Ramban explains that a Jewish army base is holy, a place where Hashem's Shekhinah dwells. And David allowed only the most pious men to serve as soldiers. This was a very great honor to fight for Israel. And it was this commitment to Torah and holiness that ensured that Hashem traveled with them and granted them victory. Okay. And so it says Hashem, it's two ways to read this: forsaking, do not forsake us, or did you forsake us in the past? And Hashem will lead me to victory. Okay. So we have two things going on here, and it's kind of look at the holiness. Okay. Implicit in that is, how could you forsake us? We're such a holy people. And really, not only were David's soldiers holy, but those who weren't fighting were also holy. They were learning Torah in the merit of the soldiers. Okay, I'm going to continue. Okay. Excuse me, I'm really losing my voice. Hava lanu Ezras mitzar. Vishav Tishuas Adam. Give us aid against the oppressor. Futile is the salvation of man. So Yoav and his brother Avishai teamed up, but they knew that Hashem was going to determine the outcome of the war. And he was telling his brother, be of good courage. Let's prove ourselves strong. We're in charge of the soldiers, the army, and the people. But Hashem will do what he believes is right. He's gonna fight and determine the outcome. Now, this is extremely an important concept. This concept is one of the most important concepts in Judaism. And that is a concept of hishtadlus, is doing an action, and at the same time, believing that Hashem determines the outcome. The classic example is parnasa. Okay, sages tell us we have to go to work, we have to earn our paycheck, and at the same time, even though we're creating this vessel for it, we have to understand the sustenance comes from Hashem. Okay. Now, everything comes from Hashem. We can't lift a finger without Hashem, but we still have bechira, free will. It's a paradox. Rebbe Nachman says, don't think too deeply about it because it'll make you crazy. Forget it. Don't worry about it. Just do what you have to do, and the bracha will come from Hashem, which is why our rabbis tell us, don't overwork. If you don't need to take overtime, you might be in a field you might be a doctor and you might need to do overtime. Okay, that's different. But if you're not in a field where you need to do overtime, don't work overtime. Okay, use the rest of the time for mitzvahs, for Torah and mitzvahs. Now, some people think that, oh, this just applies to men because they should learn Torah in their free time. Not true. This applies to women as well. Okay, don't kill yourself at work. If you were determined at Rosh Hashanah to earn $100,000, okay, it doesn't matter whether you work 40 hours, 20 hours, or 60 hours. Okay, as long as you're doing what you need to be doing, you will get your income. Okay, it's a very hard concept. So the question is, Yoav and Avishai were having this conversation, and the question is, how much do we have to do? How do we know what's enough? So I think this comes with a level of experience. You've got to know yourself. You have to know your level of emunah. Okay, how much faith do you have? How much bitachon do you have? How much trust in Hashem do you have? And also, in order to know, when I'm encountering situations that not necessarily about parnasa, but that are sometimes about parnasa, that are similarly related, I make hitbodedut. Okay, I sit down, I spend time, I talk to Hashem. Hashem, is this what I should be doing? How much of my time should I give to this? How important is this? Do I ever act on impulse? Sure, all the time. I'm an impulsive person. I say yes a lot when I shouldn't. But at the same time, when it comes to big decisions, I'm much more careful. Okay, your time is very precious, ladies. It's very, very valuable. Okay, and know that the outcome of everything is up to Hashem. Just do what you can. And people say, well, I did my best. I don't know. Sometimes people do their best and sometimes they don't. But do your best in terms of your intentions. Do your best in terms of what's right. It'll come out good in the end. And as they say, it all comes out in the wash, whatever that means. Okay, let's continue with the final verse. Belohim naaseh chayil vehu yavus sarinu. Okay. Through Hashem, we will act valiantly, and He will trample our oppressors. Again, that's an echo of that idea that with Hashem, through Him, with His, with what He wants for us, with His actions, we're going to be brave. We're going to go forward, and He's going to trample our oppressors. He's going to help us internally as well. I want to say, people say, should I be davening that I am able to battle my Yetzer Hara and grow? Yes, absolutely. Page after page after page after page of Reb Noson's prayers contain and echo just this idea. Rebbe Nachman teaches it, and this psalm teaches it as well. We have to ask Hashem for help in all our battles, not just external, but internal, maybe even especially internal battles, so that we can make choices that are correct and that we have the energy to go for. I daven for energy all the time. Can I stick to this? Hashem, please help me have stick-to-itiveness. Please help me have the energy to complete and to finish. And remember something, when you're doing something that has real Kedusha, real holiness, expect obstacles. Expect obstacles. Don't be surprised by the obstacles. Welcome them. Very often, they're a sign you're on the right path. And an obstacle, when you're genuinely doing something that's holy and you're headed in a good direction, these obstacles are there not to deter you, not to push you away, not to make you give up, but to increase your desire, says Rebbe Nachman. Anyway, there's a lot more that we could do with this psalm. I think we could spend another week on it, but we'll move forward, God willing, next week. God willing, next week, God willing, very soon, we will be able to see our complete victory and not have to suffer under the oppressors, and we can join together and welcome and greet Mashiach Tzidkenu. Okay. Questions before we get to the beautiful Tehillim laning of Naomi Batya. No questions? Okay, I have a message. Let's see. Do you think casting the shoe might be understood as an insult, as we've seen in some cultures involving a thrown shoe? Very possibly. Naomi Mass suggested this. I think it's a good idea. It also can refer to chalitza. I didn't go into all the commentaries, but yes, it's very possible. I think it's a good idea. Worth exploring. See if there's a source for that. Might be fun to see if there's a source. I'll ask my husband. It's a good one. Okay, any more questions, comments, or ideas? Nope. Okay, so let me turn off the recording.